What's up, everybody? It's your boy, the Geekly Gamer, and I'm back with the Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion Afterthoughts and Review. Your boy's here to give you his final thoughts and everything. Um, I I want to make this channel like a little less gameplay heavy and more like review heavy, and giving you guys my thoughts and opinions on certain games. So let's start off with the one we've been playing with. There will be a disclaimer I will tell you guys at the end of this. So keep in mind about the future of this channel, or I'll probably do it in another video where I talk about the future of this channel, where I plan on taking it, and about how I've been saying that I'm gonna play other games. So we'll get to that on that channel. But let's just get started with the review. So this game is very interesting to me because this game is meant to be a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, following the character of Zack, who is literally probably the most important side character in like video game history, considering this game is so iconic, and he's like the most important side character ever because of the fact that like when you buy this game and you see it on the a PlayStation 5, if you go down and they give you like the description of this game, the description literally says it's his legacy that gives life to Final Fantasy VII. And ultimately, that is truly the case because I did not know how intrinsic Zack was to the story of Final Fantasy VII, other than the fact that he was Aerith's first love interest and Cloud's like big brother slash mentor figure that like saved his life. Other than that, I didn't know anything about Zack because I love a Final Fantasy, but I never played Final Fantasy VII. I never went back to play Final Fantasy VII. I did play the remake version, and I do know certain things that happen in the future of this game. But I did not know Zack's character other than like that brief description of his character that I just gave you, right? So this was like solely new to me, seeing him, seeing his story, seeing how it ultimately ends was truly crazy. But I feel as though this game struggles in a lot of ways to ultimately want to achieve what they're trying to go for because they're trying to make this a prequel game. They're trying to establish the characters before the events of the first game. They want you to ultimately fall in love with these characters even more than what you already did. Seeing their backstory, seeing Sephiroth's backstory, seeing Zack, and basically just making the events of what happened in that game hit even more. But I feel as though this game fails to do that in certain areas because of the fact that the pacing of this game absolutely sucks. It just flat out sucks, dude. It's so bad because of the fact that I know that this game was originally made for PlayStation the PlayStation Vita, a PSP. I know it was made for that game, so they could only cram so much into that system. And I know that a lot of the cutscenes that they want to put in that game ultimately got added on as gameplay with the DMW, I believe it's called, the spin system, where it's like it lands on like the characters 777 and you get a cutscene. My issue with that is that the developers of this game that wanted to bring this game into the new Final Fantasy VII remake timeline and wanted to bring this game to a new audience, they should have changed that. Like, I don't know how fun. Look, I'm not a game developer. I don't know how long it would take to change that. but like you change the voices, you update the models, you ultimately change the combat to make it very similar to a Final Fantasy VII remake. So you ultimately went under the hood to change things. I feel as though they should have changed that, more specifically those cutscenes, and added them into the story to make you fall in love with these characters even more, because it feels as though these characters just, they get half-baked stories like Zack. Ultimately, I feel as though they did succeed with Zack's character, but I felt as though it should have hit me a lot more, right? Like when Zack dies, it feels as though it should hit me a lot more than what it does. Ultimately, it does hit me. I do shed a tear when seeing his end and seeing his final stand. But I feel as though that's not what the game developers wanted. They wanted their Arthur Morgan. They wanted their John Marston scene. They wanted that scene where, it just breaks the hearts of fans completely, right? Where it's like you it's something that you can't come back from, right? It's like that, like when Jiraiya dies in Naruto Shippuden, or when Genkai dies in like a freaking Yu Yu Hakusho. It's like it's them moments that like you can't ultimately like replicate that. You have to like set it up properly. You have to execute it right. And I feel as though it tried its best. And like I'm not judging the PSP game. I'm judging this game, the PlayStation 5 version of this game, the one that they update, the one that they went under the hood to change things. I feel as though they should have changed that to make it more impactful to me. But um, I'll get a bit more into that later when I talk about the pacing of this game. First off, I want to start with the characters. Let's start off with our main protagonist, Zack. Love him. Great character. I feel as though he's the polar opposite to Cloud, and that's perfect, right? It's like Cloud ultimately ends up the way that he is because of the events of what happens in this game, which ultimately makes him moody and an edgelord. So seeing this protagonist being a fun-loving, charismatic, jokey, kind-hearted dude who would do anything for his friends and family and would like defy all the odds, that was great to me because it's a great foil for Cloud, who ultimately has to go through character development to kind of get back to that point, to where he was very much like that before the events of this game, because he was a kind-hearted dude. He wasn't like moody or edgelord, but the events of this game turned him into that. So you know, it's it was fun. I did like Zack's character. Zack wanting to become a first class soldier like Cloud, but him being a second class soldier and being mentored by a first class soldier was a different take from Cloud just being an infantry dude who befriended a first class soldier. Was a great choice because it shows that Zack was ultimately he was ultimately a better soldier at that point. He had more training, um, which kind of leads to like some continuity issues for me, because like, how did Cloud get as good as he was? Like Cloud was an infantry dude, like carrying guns in this game, and it's like when you see him in like a Final Fantasy VII remake, or like in the original Final Fantasy VII, he's doing things similar to that of Zack. I feel as though that's weird. Like I know he was like enhanced, but it's like, dude, it's like you do know you have to like train to get them kind of skills, right? Like I didn't get a training montage. It's like I don't know like what the timeline is with Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core and like Final Fantasy VII, because it feels as though it's like a few days after the events of Final Fantasy VII, if that's the case. Because like it's like Zack dies. We get the same with Aerith. Aerith is literally in her Final Fantasy VII outfit. Cloud is in his Final Fantasy VII outfit. He now has the Apusta sword, and he's dragging it into Midgard. It's like how much time passed in between that and Cloud meeting up with Barrett and doing that mission? Like how long was that? Because if it was like a few days, it's like how in the world did Cloud get as good as he got? With like his skills, right? Because I would almost say Cloud and Zack are like equal in like skill level, and that just doesn't make sense to me because of the fact that Zack was actually a first class soldier, and Cloud was like an infantryman who didn't really have that great of training, right? So it's very weird to me. Um, I mean, Zack as his ah sorry, I went on a tangent. Shouldn't have did that. I got my notes literally like right in front of me, trying to like segue into them, but it's kind of like difficult because the more I sit and think about this game, the more things that like are brought up in my mind. I'm sorry about that. So I did like the representation of first class soldiers, where to the general audience, the general people in like Midgard, you have the upper class and like lower class people. To the people of the upper class and to the people who are actually in the soldier program, first class soldiers are like the Avengers, dude. Like they come in, they just handle business. It's like I'm looking at this scene where like Sephiroth is fighting like Genesis and they're just casually having a fight, and it's like Agil is also trying to keep them from destroying the training area, and they're just going in. It's like, dude. It's like it's a full on anime fight scene, and it's just crazy. So I love how like first class soldiers are like represented, but I did like the darker aspect. I very much like the darker aspect where they are like dogs. It kind of reminds me of like it kind of reminds me of like One Piece, where you have like the Navy and you have like the admirals, and the admirals are like the strongest of the Navy, but they have to answer directly to the like celestial dragons, and the celestial dragons are just corrupt individuals, racist, almost like Nazi-esque individuals. So they have to take these orders, and they're not seen as like people, but they're seen as like tools and weapons. I did like that for the first class soldiers because it gives a good foil for Zack because he wants to be a first class soldier so bad. But like now that you are a first class soldier, literally your first mission is to go hunt down your own mentor that went rogue, and you have to go to like his mom's house and like kind of like sit there and wait for him to show up and try to like ambush him and stuff, or then like go and like try to find Genesis. It's just like really scummy stuff that Zack has to like do, like seconds after him becoming a first class soldier. I really like that because it shows it's like, yeah, first class soldier are like the best soldiers, but they're also like he freaking they're also like the Ambu Black Ops, where they're just like they're the ones who handle like the dirty work. They handle the assassinations and all of that stuff, and it's like, do you really want to be here? So seeing that and seeing how Zack didn't really like that, was nice to see. I did like that for his character and for his development because he's contemplating what it means to be a hero. Because to him, being a hero is basically at that point all about fame and glory, rather than being a hero is about sacrifice and helping out others. So that was good. I did like that. I did very much like the character of Agio, even though we didn't get much of him. I think Agio was only in the game for like a good 30 minutes. Like his game, it took me 10 hours to beat it, and I feel as though he's only in there for like 30 minutes of it. But he is an impactful character. He imparts a lot of wisdom into Zack. He ultimately helps Zack find his moral compass into being a good first class soldier, and he ultimately represents what a first class soldier should be, and is basically like a model example. So I did like that. I feel as though I feel as though he was a good mentor to Zack, but not like a great one. Like I feel, and I don't know if that's just me or if it's just like we didn't get much time with him, and the cutscenes that they do show of him are like few and far between with the whole BMW thing, which I've already said how that kind of like ruins this game for me because those are like important moments to me, and that's where this game truly shines is in those moments, seeing those interactions. I did like the fact that he was kind of like the babysitter to like Genesis, Sephiroth, and Zack. It's like I mentioned earlier how you have this big anime fight scene between Genesis and Sephiroth, and Agio just trying to be the babysitter and make sure they don't destroy the house before like mommy and daddy get home. That was just great to me. Um, his death and seemingly survival through his copies was very heartwarming because I did not fully know if he was dead until after you got the scene where it's like confirmed that like he's actually dead, because to me I felt as though it was like a rush character death. Like we had to figure out a way to get Zack the sword fast enough so that he can have it throughout like the rest of the game, but it's like I feel as though his death was very much rushed. But I did like the idea of him surviving through his copies through the dog that like protects Aerith and who ultimately comes to help Zack. Well, ultimately comes to help Cloud while Cloud is unconscious, and like the dog protects Cloud while Zack is dealing with Genesis. That was good. I did like that. It shows that he's always there for Zack, even his death through his copies. He's always like watching over Zack. That was good. I did like that. The Turks. The Turks were very fun in this game because, to me personally, the Turks were one of the best parts of the Final Fantasy VII remake. Um, I feel as though they were good antagonists and like good foils for Cloud, Aerith, Tifa, and Barret. Um, I did like that there was more and meets the eye with the Turks because in the remake version they're really seen as antags, but they're like fun-loving antags. It's like it reminds me of that moment in FF7 remake where Aerith is telling Cloud that Rude isn't a bad guy, and Rude agrees, but sometimes he has to do bad things, and ultimately you see that with them dropping the plate over Sector 7. But here they're very much fun loving. They still have their bubbly personalities, and you get to see more of their characters in Song and in, can't ever pronounce that girl's name, but the girl with the red hair, her. Those two were standouts to me. Sung didn't really get much in the remake, so I didn't really know anything about him, but now I feel as though he's good. I liked him. I liked him. He was definitely a very much fun, loving, and interesting character. So when I do eventually go back to play the Final Fantasy VII remake game, is gonna is it gonna give me a whole new perspective on his character. So yeah, I did like how they do have a sense of honor and like loyalty to their friends and are willing to disobey orders from Shinra, because obviously you know the red-haired girl was sent to capture Zack and Cloud, and she basically let Zack and Cloud go twice. And then ultimately, when Zack is making his final stand, the Turks are actively trying to search for him before the like military gets to him, so that Sun can ultimately give him all of the freaking love letters that Aerith wrote to him. That was sweet. That that added a whole new layer to their characters for me. It really did. It shows that they do have some sense of like loyalty and honor, because when you get that moment where they drop the play on freaking Sector 7, is like that really bad villainous moment that like kind of makes me not like them. But the fact that they did that kind of adds a lot. But the fact that they were willing to disobey orders to help out a friend that they personally knew and liked, and ultimately to help them with his romance with Aerith, that added a whole new layer to them for me. I thought that was great work, and the implications of them being kids who were raised in Shinra to be like they're like CIA agents, assassins for the company speaks volumes to their character to me. I very much get like I very much get like Cypher 9 vibes with them. You know, making another One Piece reference. I definitely got those vibes. Now I don't know if that's actually what happened. I just know that the red haired girl kind of like implied that's kind of how they're like raised. They're raised to be like child soldiers. Um, I don't know if that's actually all of their stories going forward. Obviously, we'll find out in like remake. I'm sorry, in like rebirth or in the next third installment of the game. But I don't know that. So you know, hold spoilers, please. Um, Switching over to Aerith, don't really have much to say about her right now, because I have a lot more to say about her in the remake, or me just giving you my two thoughts on Aerith. Like a lot of people have talked about Aerith in the Final Fantasy VII remake game because they changed a lot about her character and her overall intentions and like insight to knowing some future events. So for right now, it's basically from what my stance is, from how I see it. The Aerith you get in this game is not the Aerith in Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I feel as though it's the very scene at the beginning of the remake that ultimately changes her character into the Aerith you see following the events of that game. So to me, Aerith is basically just fun-loving self until you get to the remake game, and then she kind of like knows what's going on, which is interesting. Like her definitely adding in new plot elements to her character. But for right now, loved her. I loved her story with Zack. them having this sweet and enduring, long-lasting love story, where she wrote him letters for 4 years. I think she wrote him longer than the dude from the Notebook, because I I don't know. It's been a long time since I watched that movie. But I think the dude from the Notebook wrote his girl stuff for like a year. She did it for 4, so she was even more dedicated than like that dude from the Notebook. Um, the fact that their love story never got a chance to blossom, ultimately, it just makes it even more heartbreaking. But considering the events of FF7 remake, that might change. Who knows? And if that's the case, I don't know if this ultimately weakens their love story or strengthens it. Don't know. We'll see how they execute that. But for right now, loved her. Great. I did love the fact that she had a she definitely had a different view on Soldier than what she had with Cloud, because obviously she already knew Zack going into like meeting Cloud, so she had already met a Soldier before. But her meeting a Soldier for the first time in Zack ultimately changes her perspective on soldiers, because for her, soldiers are kind of like brutes she very much has a a viewpoint of her mom in the remake, because her mom is very much the same way with Cloud, and how when she sees Cloud, she sees a kid who traded in a normal life for power, and to be like a warmongering brute who just loves to fight and everything. So seeing Air's perspective on that with Zack, and seeing how she kind of like has her mom's viewpoint, and then ultimately Zack changing her mind, showing her that not all soldiers are like brutes and battle hungry, was great. Getting into Cloud, meeting a young Cloud and Tifa. By the way, I'll just combine both of these segments together with Cloud and Tifa, because you don't really get that much of Tifa. Meeting a young Cloud was great. I did like Cloud. I did like seeing Cloud wanting to become a first class soldier to obviously keep his promise to. Alright, guys, I'm back. Sorry, I had to edit some stuff out. It was getting a bit cluttered. So going back, I was talking about Cloud, meeting Cloud. I did like seeing a young Cloud wanting to become a first class soldier, the same way Zack did at the beginning of the game, and ultimately Zack kind of becoming Cloud's Agil was a great way to tell their story of like a big brother, little brother relationship. And ultimately, Zack seeing a lot of himself in Cloud. I did like meeting Tifa. Tifa was great. Her being head over heels in love with Cloud, and sending Zack constant text messages about asking, is there like a blonde dude in Soldier or anything, or do you like know a blonde dude in like the Soldier program? That was just great. Um, I did like the fact that Cloud wanted to like hide himself in shame in his hometown, and he got there because obviously he hadn't really fulfilled the promise he made to Tifa or his like self or his mom or his hometown. So ultimately, he just wanted to constantly hide his face. But I did like the fact that Cloud did get his moments of shine when he seemingly killed Sephiroth in the like a final fight scene with Sephiroth, and in the most badass way too. I loved that moment for Cloud, like pulls himself deeper into like Sephiroth's sword to deal the finishing blow. That was great. It shows even now when Cloud isn't enhanced or he hasn't become this super soldier yet, he still has like the guts and the courage to like make the ultimate sacrifice, right? So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on Cloud. Ultimately, Cloud's story isn't really supposed to take off in his game. Is meant to like pave the way for Cloud. So I'll definitely talk about Cloud more in the remake review and in the rebirth review. But for right now, Cloud was great. Um, okay, now we get to Sephiroth. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this Sephiroth story. I feel as though we were gonna tell Sephiroth's origin story, tell his backstory, tell how he become like Sephiroth is the most iconic villain in video game history, right? He's up there in the top 10 at least, right? He is easily the most iconic villain in the Final Fantasy series itself, right? So seeing Sephiroth, seeing his story, seeing how it unfolds was this is where you get the pacing issue problems because I feel as though Sephiroth's story wasn't fully fleshed out. I'm not saying it's bad. His story about how he turns villain isn't bad. It just wasn't given the proper time it needed, right? There's I've always said this when it came to any form of storytelling, whether it be video games, movies, TV shows, books, anything, right? When it comes to storytelling, you can have a great idea, but poor execution. Or you could have a bad idea with great execution. But the most important part is always the execution. Because people will ultimately remember a bad story if it was executed right than a good story that was executed horribly. People have a more fonder memory of the story that was executed properly, that was ultimately a bad story, than the vice versa one. So this is one of those moments to me where it's like you had a great story, very poor execution because Sephiroth needed more. He needed more time to cook. You know, the chef was not done preparing this meal. Is what I would say. So let me get to the stuff that I did like about this story. The story is good about this great war hero who ultimately had friends. He had friends in the sense of Genesis and Agil. Seeing them, seeing them like hang out. You know, I've talked about the fight scene between him and Genesis and how that's like a great moment because they're just hanging out. It, it's it's like this is what they do on their free time, right? And like Sephiroth being happy, he's not ultimately moody edge lord yet. He does have that in him, but he's still he's still fun. He hasn't turned evil yet, right? And I love the fact that he did not want to get involved and try to stop them when Genesis left to pursue his plans and Agil left in pursuit to stop Genesis. He did not want to get involved on hands on because he didn't want to fight either of them. So I love how he trusted Zack in order to do it because he knew that Agil was mentoring Zack. So I'm gonna trust your protege to get involved rather than me get involved because I don't want to cross my blades with either of you. That's great. It gives him a sense of honor and and loyalty to his friends. Love that moment, and I love how, in a way, Sephiroth became a second mentor to that after Ajin's passing, because you get moments with the like DMW slot machine thing where it would like land on Sephiroth, and Sephiroth it would show memories of him training Zack. So I did love that. I loved it. He was still, to me, a character shrouded in a lot of like in a lot of like mystique. But when you finally see the current pull back in his origin story, seeing his spiral into madness was not what I was expecting. It just wasn't, and that's when I'm talking about that's when I'm talking about poor execution. Because ultimately, when you get this moment in chapter 8 where they go into Cloud's home village, they see Genova, they go into like the underground labs, and Sephiroth is like reading these books. The game tells you rather than showing you the passage of time. The game tells you he was in there for like 7 days, and then he finally came out. And the next thing you get is him burning the town down. It's like, what? Wait a minute. I needed more. I needed more. It's like, it's. How do I describe this? It's like knowing. It's like knowing in a prequel show that you ultimately have to get to certain things, right? So it's like, prime example, Star Wars. You have the prequel trilogy. You ultimately know Anakin is gonna become Darth Vader, but you don't know how he becomes Darth Vader. You don't know how we get to there being no more Jedi. You don't know how Obi-Wan gets to Tatooine and like he becomes a hermit to like protect Luke and watch over Luke. You don't know how Luke and Leia were born until you see the prequels. But that is another instance where in those movies, I'm not judging the animated TV shows, I'm not judging comics, I'm not judging the light novels, I'm talking about the movies. Episodes 1, 2, and 3, not judging anything else. In those movies, it's poorly executed how Anakin becomes Darth Vader. Poorly executed. Granted, he does have the most iconic fight scene in cinematic history with Obi-Wan. You can't deny that. But how we got there, that's the issue. When it comes to a prequel story, it should be the destination and not the journey. No, I'm sorry. Opposite. It needs to be more focused on the journey rather than the destination. Because ultimately the journey in a prequel story, you want to see how this character gets to here. That's why you have a show like Arcane, a good example, where you have the character of Jinx and her becoming, these characters ultimately becoming the characters you see in the video game. Arcane takes its time, builds the characters up. Jinx has one of the most iconic villain transformations ever. Silco is a great villain. It's like seeing her story culminate to the moment you get that final scene at the end of season one. It's a chef's kiss because it's the journey, not the destination. We know she becomes a villain. We know she's just as crazy as Harley Quinn. But how do we get there? That's the point. You don't get that with Sephiroth. With Sephiroth, it's like, okay, look, we told you his origin story in the OG game. So we're not gonna take our time to fully delve in and show you his fall from grace, his spiral into madness of him wanting to kill everybody on the planet and bring back Jenova. We're not gonna do any of that. We're just gonna get there. It's like jumping from A all the way to Z in the span of 2 seconds. It's like, no, we need B through Y. We gotta see that journey. And we just don't get that. And that's because of the runtime of this game. That's why I don't really like it, but the story itself was great. The execution was horrible. Now we get to Genesis. Oh, I hate Genesis. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I don't know if I am in the minority when it comes to Genesis, but I know for me, he was one of the most boring antagonists I have ever seen in a Final Fantasy game. Which sucks, because that dude has a really cool design going for him. He has a really cool design going for him. I think I mentioned in some of my gameplay footage that he looks like a Dante. But he has none of the swag, none of the drip, none of the charisma of Dante at all. Like I couldn't understand, I couldn't even understand the plot of the story at all, other than the fact that he's trying to save himself. It's like him always talking to Zack in this Shakespearean way was really cool at first. But then it got old like super fast, dude. I mean super fast. It was bad, dude. Like I get it, him finding out that he was an experiment and like wanting revenge for what happened while also trying to find a cure for his like degrading body was cool and could have been a great story if executed properly. That's where I'm going. Pacing of this game sucks. The execution, poor. But the game didn't have time to do that. And that sucks. And I feel as though they should have had time for this game. If I'm talking about the PSP game, fine. I give it a pass because you can't really do them long story form games as you can on the gaming console. But you're bringing this into the modern era. You should definitely add these. You should definitely see the flaws in this game and like not full on remake it, but add to it. Give us that extra content. Give us them extra scenes. Help flush out the story a lot more, and that's something they just did not do, and that's what makes me upset. Because this game feels like a PSP game. It feels as though you're only meant to play it for a few hours and the story kind of just leaves you. And him wanting to take over the world for some goddess or something like that, like I don't know the plot, man. I couldn't follow along, which sucks because I really wanted to like his character, but the weak execution of his character, the convoluted plots is like at one point I'm like, wait, is he trying to do the same thing that Sephiroth is trying to do? in the OG game, or is it something new? Like, I don't know, because both of these guys say that they want to take over the planet for some goddess, and I'm like, are we just rehashing Sephiroth's plot with this dude? It's like, I don't know. I can't say he was a good villain or really a good foil to Zack either. Like, I don't know. It's just weird, bro. But the A plot of diving into Final Fantasy VII most important characters was done in a seemingly rush or like reckless job with an antag who isn't very good and a rush character and rush character moments. This story, it just has bad pacing issues. The moments where this game slows down to tell you the relationships that Zack has with these characters is when this game truly shines. And it ultimately helps you to feel the impact that the devs want you to feel when Zack makes his final stand. Seeing Zack lose, slowly die while fighting these characters is a truly sad moment, but I feel as though it was not impactful as it could have been. It feels hollow in a sense for me, where I felt something, but I felt as though it was missing something. Like, I was supposed to feel it more. I felt a lot more in the remake where in Zack in the brand new timeline supposedly lives, which is crazy because I've never played this game. I did not know the character of Zack at all. I didn't. So the fact that I felt more in that moment than I did in this moment says a lot to poor execution for me. So honestly, I have to I uh, if I have to give a score out of 10, I would give it a 6.5. When the character moments hit, they hit. But those moments are few and far between. So I'm sorry. That is my review and final thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. I will be uploading my review on Final Fantasy VII Remake within the next coming days, so stay tuned for that. And I will be making that update video on the channel where I plan on taking it. But until then, it's your boy, Geekly Gamer, logging off. Bye, guys.